All right, so apple picking in North Georgia. I want to begin by saying that apples have a tremendous genetic diversity and a rich, rich history worldwide. The apple is believed to have been originated in an area between the Caspian and the Black Sea. And believe it or not, apples can vary tremendously in size from anywhere as small as a cherry to as large as a grapefruit. So again, tremendous genetic diversity there. Interestingly enough, there are thousands of varieties available, and about 2,500 are cultivated in the United States, but only about 100 of those are produced commercially. As far as when are apples in season, here in North Georgia, production actually starts in August and rolls all the way into November. But really, we're picking apples as early as July as well, with one of my favorite varieties being Ginger Gold, which is a summer apple. So I think lots of folks don't realize that we're actually picking apples in July, which I think is really neat and a testament to that genetic diversity, which I was speaking to a moment ago. Here in North Georgia, we have about 40 of those 100 commercially produced varieties that we grow. But that can vary year to year as growers want to try new varieties. So if you're interested in a specific one, I encourage you to always call and ask to see if it's produced. The nexus of Georgia's production is located in Gilmer and Fannin counties. Between the two, we share about 85% of the state's total production, and each orchard is different. So if you have a hayride in mind, or you want to do a pick your own, there is definitely an orchard for you, if not several. And as far as Apple Alley goes, that is a term that we use to describe Highway 52 in Gilmer County in Ellijay. There are several orchards that are all lined up in a row, so you don't stop at one, just do the whole experience and check them all out, because like I mentioned, there's going to be a unique experience at each one of those orchards. And with that in mind, I do want to cover some general pick your own / farm etiquette tips for those of you who might be considering picking apples for the first time, or who have never done a pick your own before. There are some things to consider. So first of all, keep in mind that this is an operating farm and you're being invited as a guest to go experience that harvesting component, which can be very enjoyable for a family. But there are some tips and tricks to make your experience a success. So one being, make sure whenever you arrive, you park in marked areas only. It might look like there's an access route into an orchard, but that's for farm personnel only. So just make sure when you drive up, you park in a well-marked area for guests. And please drive slowly. This is a bustling time of year for our apple orchards in Gilmer and Fannin counties, and everywhere else in the state that's doing pick your owns for fruit, and youngins are everywhere. So just, I know you might be excited, but just drive slowly and keep in mind that children are out and about this time of year at orchards. Dress appropriately. You're going out onto a farm, so I recommend closed-toe shoes ideally. Watch for ant beds, and you might want to bring a hat and sunscreen. And just on the other side of that token, you never know what the weather is going to do up here in the mountains, so you might want to bring a rain jacket as well. I also encourage folks who have pets and might want to bring your furry companion along to call in advance or do a little research beforehand if you've got a specific orchard in mind that you want to go see, and inquire about their pet policies. Each orchard has different policies with that. So, you just want to plan in advance so you can make sure if your furry companion can join you or not. Another thing, we'll get into this in a little more detail here in a moment, but treat plants and trees with care. It is possible to damage plants when you're harvesting, and so we'll cover how to actually pick an apple here in just a moment. Another word of caution whenever you're going out into the field or an orchard is to watch out for honeybees and bumblebees. They're essential pollinators. Apples require cross-pollination to flower and produce fruit. Many of our producers have honeybee hives, and so please, if you come across those, leave them be, and particularly If you are allergic to honeybees or any other type of stinging insect, I recommend to go ahead and just bring that EpiPen or any medicines you might require, because you never know what might happen and you want to be prepared. So those are just a few tips and tricks, to prepare you for a field experience out at a farm. So how do you properly pick an apple? Just like digging the hole, there's a right and a wrong way. So it's the same goes for picking really any fruit, but apples in particular do have some peculiarities to them that can be troublesome. So you might think that you just walk up to the tree and pull the apple off the branch, and you would be incorrect. So there is a trick to picking apples. So what you really want to do is make sure that you walk up to that tree and gently place your hand on the fruit and kind of lift and twist away from the branch. So you can see in this picture here to the right, I have a fruiting spur marked, and then I have the actual fruit stem pointed out. So fruiting spurs on an apple take about 2 years to develop, and they're actually quite easy to pull off if you're not picking that apple correctly. So that's why I want to encourage you to place that apple in your hand, gently lift and twist, and if it's ripe, it should come right off the tree. And if it gives you a hard time, I would probably leave that one. It might not be fully mature. And speaking of maturity and where to find apples that are the ripest, because when you do a pick your own, the growers are definitely going to send you out to an area with ripe apples, but on a tree there can be variation. For example, apples are going to ripen from the exterior of the branches towards the center of the tree. So generally the ripest fruit is going to be on the tips of those branches, or on the southwestern side, which gets more sun exposure. So you can use those tips and tricks to help you find the ripest, sweetest apples on the tree, and then taking care to not damage the tree when you're harvesting that fruit. Because again, those fruiting spurs are valuable fruit production real estate on that tree. And when they get ripped off, you are losing production on that tree, and it does take multiple years for those structures to develop. So do keep that in mind. And if you pull a spur off, it's not the end of the world, but do your best to try to not do that when you're out in the field. Another thing that folks might not realize, because apples are pretty big and they're firm, is how fragile they really are. They can bruise easily, so when you have your basket, don't just drop them in there as you're picking. And this can be a challenging for youngins who get really excited out there and they want to pick as many apples as they can. But do just try to encourage any children or yourself to gently place that apple into the basket, because they will bruise, and that will greatly reduce the storage life of those fruits. Another tip is to please not pick any fruit that has fallen on the ground. Even if you happen to drop an apple, I recommend leaving it. The ground can have various, contaminants that might be a concern for food safety. And so it really is in your best interest just to leave any fruit that falls on the ground and only harvest fruit that you pick safely off the tree and pick yourselves. After you've picked your apples and you're ready to bring them home with you, there are some, depending on how many apples you pick, some suggestions for storage to increase the to decrease the perishability of the fruit. So for example, if you only get, one basket of apples, chances are you and your family are going to gobble those up quickly. But if you pick quite a few, or with the intention of making applesauce or apple butter later, you're definitely going to want to put those apples into a cold storage environment. I think folks need to realize that fruit doesn't just simply die and stop going through its biological processes once it's been picked from the tree. It's actually quite the contrary. Fruit are living organisms that continue to take in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. And additionally, apples are what we call a climacteric crop, which is a fancy term for saying that as they're breathing and respiring, they're also letting out the ripening hormone ethylene. which is the same hormone that causes tomatoes to go from green to red on the countertop. So that can accelerate the ripening process, and you can find those apples on your counter start to soften much, much more quickly than those that have been put into a cold storage situation, like in the crisper drawer in the refrigerator, which slows down that respiration process and allows that fruit to last longer. So fruit is going to last weeks longer than it would be left on your countertop, for example. So you can store it down as low as 32 degrees. Don't get much lower than that, or you could risk injuring the fruit due to cold damage. Apples do tend to start freezing at about 29 degrees Fahrenheit. So just keep that in mind if you're wanting to put them into cold storage. Another way to really increase the longevity of your apples is to maintain a high humidity environment, which is why I recommended the crisper drawer. Otherwise, they're going to dry out and shrivel up, and the golden varieties, particularly Golden Delicious, is particularly susceptible to desiccating if it's not in a high humidity environment. Another tip would be to, as you can see these apples in the picture, they're in a plastic bag. So that kind of helps keep in some of that moisture. And while you wouldn't want the bag to be completely tied up, if you left the apples in the plastic bag and just kind of folded over the opening, that will help preserve some humidity, and those apples will last a lot longer. Now, granted, chances are you won't have to store these apples for weeks because they're going to be so delicious, you're going to gobble them up quickly. But in the event that you have lots of apples that you want to store and keep around for a while, this would be a really good strategy for you. So I wanted to change gears just a little bit and feature some of the most popular varieties that we grow in North Georgia. Again, keep in mind, we have over 40 that we grow commercially, and I'm not going to cover every single one of those, but I did want to feature a handful or so of some of the more popular varieties, what they look like, and just a little information about these. So in case you're considering coming up, but you're not sure what apple to pick, maybe this will help you in your decision. So Pink Lady is one of my absolute favorite varieties. You can see it's this gorgeous blush color, and it was actually developed in Western Australia. It's very sweet and crisp, and I think it's best for eating fresh, but it also makes a pretty good applesauce, and it's good in baked goods as well. So it's a good all-around utilitarian apple, and it really is beautiful as well. It's actually a cross between Golden Delicious and Lady Williams. So just a little history for you there on the parentage. And it's unfortunately not available yet. It's a later season variety, but come mid or late October, we can expect to see those coming in. Empire is another great variety. It was premiered in 1966 in the Empire State of New York. It's a McIntosh top apple. It's got very long shelf life, gorgeous, deep ruby red coloring. And of course, it can be eaten fresh or also used for baking. And this one's starting to come into season now. So not all of the orchards grow this one, but it is a really good variety, and I highly recommend it. I'm sure everyone has heard of Gala. It's crisp, it's juicy, it's super sweet, and it's one of the first apples to come into season. We're picking Gala and Ginger Golds as soon as late July, and certainly by the time August rolls around. This was a variety developed in New Zealand, and like I mentioned, it's super sweet. It's actually a little bit smaller in size, so it's great to send in lunch boxes for your kiddos. And unfortunately, it's due to it being super juicy and very sweet, it doesn't store very well. So this is definitely one that if you get a bunch of them, I would make some refrigerator space. So gobble these up quickly. These aren't really the best candidate for long-term storage like some of our other ones. Fuji, you guessed it. It's named after the famous Mount Fuji in Japan and has been around since the 1930s. This is another very sweet aromatic apple, and it has these really beautiful yellow, green, red highlights on it. So it's a very fetching apple in your fruit bowl on your counter. It can be eaten fresh, and it makes a really nice applesauce, at least in my opinion. It's a good keeper, so it's going to store better than the Gala will, and it is later season, so this one's not available right now, but come mid or late October, Fuji should be rolling in, so keep an eye out for that one. I'm sure everyone's also heard of Golden Delicious, and it does tend to get a little bit of a pink blush on it if it's been exposed to sun, so those are going to be super sweet, and keep a good eye out for those if you're doing a pick your own and harvesting your own Goldens. It's firm and it has nice, bright, white flesh. It's got a milder flavor. So it's kind of like when you describe a fish and you're like, oh, that fish is too fishy for me. Goldens are a good compromise in apple flavor. So they're a little milder. They got a lot of sugar to them. So that's a good one to try. It's also good eaten fresh or made in applesauce as well. So a good utilitarian apple. And it is a early season variety, so it is available now for most pick your own operations. So call ahead for availability, but this one is right for the picking now. Granny Smith, one of my personal favorite apples, is an Australian native. It's been around since the 1800s and was a chance seedling that was discovered by Granny Ann Smith of Ryde, New South Wales. It's very tart, has just a fetching, beautiful green color to it. It's definitely best for people who like tart fruit because this one, while it will have some sugars to it, it's known for that very sour taste. This is another later season variety, so I am waiting with bated breath for this to come into season so I can get some. It's not the best for applesauces unless you like that tart flavor, which I personally do, but I do want to have that disclaimer that your applesauce will have a tart component to it. I think it's great for baking and just an all-around fabulous apple, again, if you like something a little more sour and not pure sweet like a Gala. Of course, I had to include Honeycrisp. I have had quite a few calls already for folks who are wanting to get Honeycrisp. It's juicy, it's sweet, it's a beautiful apple, and it's actually a cross between Keepsake and an unreleased Minnesota variety known as MN 1627, just for those of you who are curious about parentage. And since it was developed further north, Honeycrisp does... It's challenging to grow Honeycrisp down here in the southern United States just because our growing environment is so much more different than further north. And so heat can be an issue for Honeycrisp and it's challenging to grow. So while we do have it, not every orchard produces Honeycrisp. And since it's so popular, demand is high. So if you're on a quest to get some locally grown Honeycrisp, I highly recommend you call in advance and inquire about availability. It could be that it's available in the market, but not for pick your own or vice versa, or they could be sold out. So if you're wanting this variety, I would go ahead and call because it is starting to come into season now. And if you want it, I don't want you to miss out. So that's just another good example of doing a little legwork in advance and making sure a specific variety is available if you're interested. So Red Delicious, apple recognized worldwide, and it was developed in the United States back in the 1870s in Iowa. And for decades, this was the poster child for apple cultivars worldwide. And it's only recently been dethroned to other new innovative varieties like Honeycrisp, for example. So it has that classic elongated shape with feet. And that's a very good indicator that apple was produced in the Northwest, where most of our apples are produced commercially in a national scale. But down here in the Southeast, our nights just don't quite get as cold as it does in the Pacific Northwest. So some of our Red Delicious will be a little bit more rounded. So for the discerning apple shopper, if you're in the grocery store you can really pick out that classic elongated shape with the little feet down at the base, and you'll know more than likely that wasn't a Georgia grown delicious, although depending on the season, we can get that elongated shape better than others, but that's just a little trivia for you there. I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but I just wanted you to kind of get an idea of the variety and diversity that you can experience when you go to an orchard as opposed to the local grocery store. We have over 40 varieties that we grow up here in North Georgia commercially. Not every orchard grows the same varieties, but these are a few of the ones that are grown pretty commonly across most orchards, and just some a snapshot of when they might be coming into season. You know, it's when it comes to estimating when things are going to ripen, you know, we have that. Well, we know the variety, and if it's an early, mid, or late season variety, we kind of have a ballpark of when, and then based on local weather conditions, that might vary a little bit more. So these are just some estimates of when these varieties are going to be coming into season. So you might know, okay, I want to get Granny Smith, Pink Lady, Arkansas Black. I need a plan for my trip probably in mid-October, and call ahead just to make sure that those varieties are available. And then lastly, I just want to mention that we're in COVID times. I'm sure I don't have to really remind anybody of that, but it's when it comes to operating a pick your own, our growers are facing challenges just like every other business. So I encourage you to be patient, extend a little bit of grace, and call ahead and inquire about what their operating procedures are right now. Lots of our apple houses do require a face mask if you're going into the market. Some might be accepting cash, others might not be. It really just depends on the specific orchard and how they're managing through the pandemic. So call ahead, and I hope that you join us this apple season here in North Georgia. And I know we'll be taking questions at the end, so I am going to go ahead and finish my presentation and turn it over to Jesse Moore.